When somebody asks for my nationality, I tell them I'm Canadian. But lately I've been wondering what that means. I was born in this country, but I don't belong to it. I can speak 4 languages, but none of them are Indigenous. And without the stories that go with the language, there is nothing to tie me to this land. I grew up here, but I don't belong here. I was raised and educated in the language of the people who colonized both my countries. And it's left me voiceless, unable to speak the language of my ancestors and unable to speak the language of the land I live on. I carry 2 passports, but I don't feel comfortable with either. I'm not Irish, but Irish-Canadian, and Canada is nothing more than an abstract notion. The more I see of this country, the more I realize how little ties us together. I have lived in 4 countries and traveled to 4 continents, but nowhere I have visited has been more different than our own north. The Thai may not be Western, but they still buy their meat in a supermarket. In Labrador, people still live off the land. So what are we doing destroying this country which sustains us? We can't eat petrol, but it seems that our government does not care, because this land does not run in its blood. What is Alberta to a few white men in Ontario? When the time comes, they will simply pack up and leave like their ancestors in Europe before them. Harper issued an official apology to Alberta First Nations in 2008, but his words were as insincere as the oil served with them, laced with fish in what used to be a river. Harper issued an apology for the wrongdoings of the past, but he hasn't acted to ensure there are no more in the future. When I was 15 years old, I remember being proud to be Canadian, but it's a pride I can no longer feel. How can I be proud of a country which relies on abstract connections, hockey and maple leaves to tie us together, and the kilometers between us to keep us apart? I have friends from Quebec who always tell me, "On n'est pas comme le reste du Canada." But when I ask them what the rest of Canada is like, all they can give me is a description of southern Ontario. Sometimes I tell them jokingly that I'm from BC and that we hate Ontario too. But sometimes I ask more seriously what southern Ontario has in common with Labrador, or Nunavut, or the Cree in Manitoba, or the Haida of Haida Gwaii, or the Anishinaabe of Manitoulin Island. They don't have an answer for that. We've built our country on the notion of 2 founding fathers, but how many of us are English or French in our blood? You can tell me that Canada has universal values, but I can tell you that nothing is universal. Even our healthcare coverage is provincial, and you can lose it without ever leaving Canada, simply by moving between provinces. This is our government's way of keeping us apart. They know that the only way to hold us together is to keep us from getting to know one another. They know that what we call lunch on the West Coast is called dinner on the East Coast, and they know that within a single province there are multiple realities. I once asked a group of friends what they identify more with, their province or Canada. From BC to the prairies to the Maritimes, we all said our provinces, with one exception. My friend from Ontario said, "What do you mean? We don't really distinguish between the 2. Ontario is Canada." If Ontario is Canada, then where does that leave me from BC? Or you from Saskatchewan, or Nova Scotia, or Newfoundland, or the Northwest Territories? Are we Canadian? Or are we just the colonies of Ontario, there for her profit and exploitation? I love this country, but I can no longer hold it together in my mind.